Zanele Dlamini walked through the gates of Prestige Academy like she owned the place, because in many ways she did. With her designer uniform tailored to perfection and her long silky hair cascading over her shoulders, she was the embodiment of wealth and influence. Every student either wanted to be her or be close to her. Her father, a business mogul, had built an empire that funded many of the city's most expensive developments. At only 17, Zanele had never known what it meant to lack anything. But beneath her diamond-studded exterior, there was an emptiness she never admitted, even to herself. Her friendships were built on status, her conversations shallow, and her dreams carefully molded by her parents' expectations. She ruled the school, but deep down she had no idea who she really was. Sifo Kumalo lived in a world that couldn't be more different from Zanele's. He came from a humble home on the outskirts of the city, where his mother sold vegetables at the market and his father worked as a security guard. He was a scholarship student at Prestige Academy, often ignored by the elites but respected for his intelligence and kind heart. Unlike Zanele, Sifo didn't care for status. He found joy in simple things, helping his mother at the market, playing soccer with his little brother, and fixing old radios with his uncle. He had dreams of becoming an engineer, and he worked hard every day to make that dream a reality. Their paths rarely crossed, but that was about to change in ways neither of them could have imagined. The day started like any other for Zanele, except it wasn't. A sleek black car picked her up from her mansion and dropped her off at school, but the moment she stepped out, she felt an unusual heaviness in the air. The usual adoration of her peers felt hollow, like a distant echo. Halfway through the day, the principal's voice crackled over the intercom. "Zanele Dlamini, please report to my office immediately." The entire class went silent. Whispers filled the room as she rose, her head held high despite the knots forming in her stomach. She walked with measured steps, her heart pounding louder with each one. When she entered the office, she found her uncle standing there, his face pale and grief-stricken. "There's been an accident," he said, voice trembling. "Your father, he's gone." The world tilted beneath her feet. The girl who had everything suddenly felt like she had nothing. Zanele's fingers clutched the edge of the principal's desk as she struggled to process the words. Her father, her unshakable, larger-than-life father, was gone. The very foundation of her world cracked, and for the first time in her life, she felt utterly powerless. Her uncle placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "We have to go home now, Zanele." Home. The thought made her stomach churn. The lavish mansion filled with servants and expensive art pieces suddenly felt like an empty shell. The ride home was silent, except for her mother's soft sobs in the back seat. Zanele stared out of the window, watching as the city blurred past her. When they arrived, relatives and family friends filled the house, whispering condolences and casting sympathetic glances her way. She felt suffocated, desperate for air, but there was nowhere to run. Her world was no longer her own. The next few days passed in a haze of mourning, but Zanele barely shed a tear. She refused to be weak. The funeral was a grand affair, attended by dignitaries and the wealthiest families in the city. Yet she felt like a stranger in her own life. After the service, she wandered away from the crowd, finding herself in the school's garden. She had thought she was alone, but then she spotted Sifo, sitting quietly under a tree with a book in his hands. For reasons she couldn't explain, she walked toward him. "What are you reading?" she asked, her voice sounding foreign to her own ears. He looked up, surprised. "A book about resilience," he replied. "Sometimes life tests us in ways we don't expect." She sat down beside him, not knowing why. But in that moment, his quiet presence felt like the only solid thing in her crumbling world. As the days passed, Zanele found herself drawn to Sifo's calm and thoughtful nature. He never treated her like the broken rich girl or sought to gain anything from their conversations. Instead, he listened, offering words of wisdom that made her question everything she once believed about status and happiness. For the first time in her life, she found comfort in simplicity. She accompanied Sifo to the market one weekend, helping his mother sell vegetables. The experience was foreign yet oddly grounding. The warmth of the community, the laughter of children, and the genuine connections between people fascinated her. Her mother, however, disapproved of her new friendships. "You have a legacy to uphold," she reminded her coldly. "Your father wouldn't want you associating with people who have nothing." But Zanelli was beginning to see that wealth wasn't the only thing that defined a person. She was slowly learning that true richness lay in kindness, love, and resilience. Zanelli's transformation didn't go unnoticed. Her friends at Prestige Academy whispered behind her back, wondering why she was spending so much time with a scholarship student. Her mother grew more controlling, monitoring her every move. One evening, she returned home to find her mother waiting for her in the living room. "This nonsense ends now," she said sharply. "You are not to see that boy again." Zanelli clenched her fists. "Sifo is my friend. He's the only person who truly listens to me." Her mother's expression hardened. "You don't need friends like him. You need to focus on our family's reputation." Zanelli felt a fire ignite within her. For the first time in her life, she was ready to fight for what she truly wanted. Despite her mother's warning, Zanelli continued to meet Sifo in secret. Their conversations became longer, their connection deeper. He introduced her to books about self-discovery and purpose, sparking a hunger for knowledge that went beyond luxury and power. One afternoon, as they sat by the riverbank, Sifo turned to her. "You're stronger than you think, Zanelli. You don't have to live by someone else's script." His words struck a chord within her. For the first time, she dared to dream beyond what her parents had planned for her. But defying her family wouldn't be easy, and the consequences were just beginning to unfold. Zanelli's defiance did not go unnoticed. Her mother grew colder, her punishments stricter. She confiscated Zanelli's phone, limited her outings, and even arranged for her to have extra tutoring sessions to keep her occupied. But none of it stopped Zanelli from thinking about Sifo. At school, whispers about her association with him turned into outright taunts. "The Queen of Prestige Academy has fallen," someone sneered in the hallway. But Zanelli no longer cared. She had seen something real, something beyond the empty glamour of her former life, and she wasn't ready to give it up. One evening, she overheard her mother speaking with her uncle. "If she doesn't come to her senses soon, I'll have to send her away. We cannot afford this scandal." Zanelli's heart pounded. Her own mother was willing to exile her to save face. The reality of her situation became clearer than ever. She had to choose between obedience and her own happiness. Terrified at the prospect of being sent away, Zanelli confided in Sifo. "I can't let her control me forever," she whispered as they sat beneath their favorite tree. "I need a way out." Sifo hesitated. "You could come stay with us. My mother would take you in." Zanelli smiled sadly. "I can't burden your family, Sifo. I have to find a way to stand on my own." They brainstormed ideas, from getting a job to finding a way to access her father's inheritance, but none of the solutions seemed viable, not yet. The only thing Zanelli knew for certain was that she was running out of time. Just when she thought she could hold on a little longer, Zanelli's secret meetings with Sifo were discovered. A servant at her house reported her to her mother, who confronted her with rage unlike anything Zanelli had ever seen. "I won't allow you to throw your life away for some charity case," her mother screamed, slamming a fist onto the table. "I warned you, Zanelli. Now you leave me no choice." The next morning, Zanelli was given an ultimatum: end her friendship with Sifo or pack her bags for an international boarding school. She refused to respond. Her silence was all the answer her mother needed. Zanelli's worst fears came true when she woke up to pack suitcases by her door. Her mother stood over her, cold and resolute. "You leave tonight," she said. Panic surged through Zanelli. She had no say, no power against her mother's iron will. That evening she was driven to the airport, her heart breaking with every passing mile. Sifo's words echoed in her mind. "You're stronger than you think." But was she strong enough to fight this? As she boarded the plane, tears blurred her vision. She was being torn from everything she had come to love, and there was nothing she could do, yet. Zanelli arrived at an elite boarding school in Switzerland, where everything felt sterile and lifeless. The cold walls mirrored the emptiness inside her. She sat through classes, ate tasteless meals, and went through the motions like a ghost. Letters from home were scarce. Saifo's messages never came. Her mother had likely ensured they wouldn't reach her. She felt more alone than ever, trapped in a gilded cage with no escape. But something inside her refused to give up. If she couldn't return home, she would find another way to take control of her life. Determined to reconnect, Zanelli reached out to Saifo once more. He was hesitant but agreed to meet her. Over coffee, they spoke like old friends, reminiscing about their childhood. "I've changed, Zanelli," Saifo admitted, "but maybe we can start again." Zanelli smiled. "I'd like that." As they rebuilt their friendship, Zanelli found strength in his unwavering support. He had become a social worker, dedicating his life to helping underprivileged youth. His passion inspired her to use her success for more than just profit. Inspired by Saifo's work, Zanelli launched a foundation to support young entrepreneurs from disadvantaged backgrounds. She funded mentorship programs, helping others build their dreams just as she had. Her efforts gained widespread praise, but not everyone was pleased. Her mother, still bitter over Zanelli's defiance, refused to acknowledge her accomplishments. "You could have had everything," her mother sneered during a rare encounter. "Instead, you chose to struggle." But Zanelli no longer needed her approval. She had built something of her own, something real. As time passed, Zanelli and Saifo grew closer. Their bond, once broken by distance and circumstance, had deepened. But Zanelli feared opening her heart again. "I don't want to lose myself," she confessed. "You won't," Saifo reassured her. "Love isn't about losing yourself. It's about growing together." For the first time in years, Zanelli allowed herself to believe in love again. One day, Zanelli's mother fell gravely ill. Despite their estrangement, Zanelli visited her in the hospital. "I never hated you," her mother admitted weakly. "I only wanted to protect our name." Zanelli sighed. "I didn't need protection, Mama. I needed you to believe in me." Tears streamed down her mother's face. "I see that now." Though their relationship would never be perfect, a bridge had been rebuilt between them. On the night of her biggest business achievement, a gala celebrating her foundation's success, Saifo pulled her aside. "Zanelli, we've been through so much," he said, kneeling before her. "I love you. Will you marry me?" Tears filled her eyes. She had fought for her independence, her dreams, and her happiness. Now she was ready for love. "Yes," she whispered. Their wedding was a celebration of love, resilience, and unity. Elders from both families came together, embracing their union. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was real, filled with struggle and triumph. As Zanelli looked at